Happy 400 years of Turkey Day, US comrades. As a Scottish person, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I never have. And because of what I'm talking about today, I never will. My first introduction to Native Americans was when I was a young child. My grandparents had just returned from holiday in the US, and they were discussing the concept of tax being added on at the checkout, which is still weird as hell to me. Then my granddad said to me, but the native people refuse to pay the tax. They say no because it's their country. They were there first. Now, my view of the world was fairly limited at this time. All I really knew about the US was that their accents were different to mine, and that they'd made a lot of the films and TV shows I liked to watch. Hearing that the first people in the US were in fact not white Columbus types was an exciting revelation for my young mind. I asked my granddad for more information, but unfortunately he didn't have any for me. I'm ashamed to admit that I spent the majority of my life since then with the same limited knowledge. I recently learned that Native Americans do in fact pay taxes, but there are exceptions among different services and depending on if different tribes are involved. Now, I am definitely not the best person to educate about this, so I recommend doing your own research and asking a Native American person if you know any. Roll around 2020. Awful year, as we all know. But this was the year that I made my first TikTok account, and I discovered a plethora of Native American creators. As an uncultured white person, I had no idea that Native American culture was still so prevalent today. It made me feel an odd sense of joy, which was inflated when I discovered that 1.5% of the US population today is still comprised of Native Americans. Thanksgiving is said to be based on a meal shared between colonists and some members of the Wampanoag tribe back in 1621. This is why at the beginning of the video I said happy 400 years of Turkey Day. But this is inaccurate. Thanksgiving was not a recognised holiday until Abraham Lincoln declared it so in 1863. Perhaps the most surprising fact I discovered during my research was that there was no evidence that the Wampanoag people were even invited. It's likely that they were definitely there, considering it was their fucking land, but there were rumours that they actually only came because they heard gunshots. Either way, it's pretty obvious that this sunshine and rainbows gathering depicted in American history books was not at all the case. A study estimated that before this gathering, the indigenous population had been reduced by nearly 90% due to disease. These diseases, of which their identity remains unknown, were said to be brought by early European settlers. Over the next 50 years, relations between the Native Americans and the colonists became strained. By 1675, the New England Confederation of Colonies had declared war, and the war was absolutely brutal. This was just one of many wars between the Native Americans and the colonists. From the moment they arrived, the settlers screwed with the indigenous people. They brought disease, selfishly stole crops in winter provisions, and broke many peace treaties. But the worst of all was the ruthless slaughtering of indigenous people. This darker side of American history has been covered up, glossed over, and with November being Native American History Month, I think it's quite a disgrace that the story of Thanksgiving is told so inaccurately. It's erasure, it's oppression, and it's disgusting. Even in our contemporary society, Native American people continue to face the same oppression. Many Native people, and some allies, now refuse to celebrate Thanksgiving altogether. They choose to celebrate this day as a national day of mourning. The National Day of Mourning has been celebrated since 1970, and it involves Native people and their allies gathering at noon in Plymouth, Massachusetts, for a day of solidarity and remembrance over their fallen and oppressed people, past, present, and future. The event is also a protest against the racism and injustice the Native American people continue to face today, and in my opinion, it's an absolutely brilliant way to remember the truth of what really happened with regards to Thanksgiving. Now, as a white woman living in the UK, I'm not going to pretend to have some sort of profound understanding of the way that Native people feel. I will simply never understand the full extent of the scarring left on the Native Americans by the people from my continent, but I will always do my damn best to be an ally. And I hope this video has been educational. And for the love of God, can we please respect Indigenous people by telling the damn truth about what we did to them?